evolution is real. And if there is this constant...
It real? There's no evidence that evolution... In fact, I think we've kind of given up on the idea of evolution. The
Who's we?
theory of evolution is articulated by Darwin.
You got a mouse in your pocket? Is that why you're saying we?
Evolution. The theory of evolution is articulated by Darwin is like kind of not true.
Yeah, absolute nonsense. Evolution has time and time again been proven to be true. This is Joe Rogan, and he had a conversation with Tucker Carlson. This is a little bit of an older clip now, but they talked about evolution, and I wanted to address some of the absolutely unglued from reality things that Tucker had to say about evolution. He's probably going to get a copyright claim because Joe Rogan doesn't like being criticized, seemingly. He copyright claims everything. I'm dealing with copyright claims with him right now on my Unfiltered YouTube channel.
If we don't think people are important, then what do we think is important? I guess that's what I'm saying.
Not necessarily that we don't think people are important, but if evolution is real, and if...
I get, like, in this part, I got the indication that Joe was about to ask a question and then decided to state evolution is real as a fact. Joe seems to believe in evolution or accept evolution as the fact that it is, right? I mean, I don't like the guy very much, but...
Real. And if there is this constant... I don't know.
Yes.
But it's visible. Like, you can measure it in certain animals.
You can measure adaptation.
Yeah.
But there's no evidence that in fact, I think we've kind of given up on the idea of evolution.
Dude, I love that he accepts the core pillar of evolution, the thing that makes evolution evolution, and says this is not real. All you need from that point is time. You just need time. Adaptation and time. 3 pillars. Gene mutation, gene duplication, and selection. Natural selection, artificial selection, sexual selection, so on and so forth. And then time being the 4th pillar, I guess.
Theory of evolution is articulated by Darwin is like kind of not true. Right?
In what sense?
Yeah, in what sense?
Well, in the most basic sense, the idea
that doesn't tell me anything.
That, all life emerged from a single cell organism and over time, and there would be a fossil record of that, and there's not.
There is a fossil record. There is a fossil record.
There's not a fossil record of transitionary species, like species that are adapting to its environment.
There's
and they
tons
develop...
of record of adaptation, and you see it in your own life. I mean, I have a lot of dogs.
Bro, that's what everybody is saying. That's what we're saying. Does Tucker believe this? I don't think so. I don't think Tucker is as stupid as he pretends to be. I have my reasons for thinking that, but I believe that Tucker knows what he's doing and is doing it intentionally. It's so hard to tell if people are for real or if they're completely full of it. I think Liz Crokin is a true believer. QAnon or Liz Crokin. I think she believes it to her core. Tucker seems 100% fake to me. Jehovah's Witness leaders, I think they believe it to their core. The leader of Heaven's Gate, I think he believed it to his core. A lot of the leadership in the Mormon Church, I think they're just pretending and taking advantage of everything. I guess it just kind of varies from person to person. I think Tucker's faking it.
Your own life. I mean, I have a lot of dogs. I see adaptation in dogs, through the...
Sure.
Through litter to litter. But no, there's no evidence at all that...
Yes, there is.
None, zero. That, people, evolve seamlessly from a single cell amoeba. No, there's not. There's no chain in the fossil record.
Yes, there is.
Of that at all. And that...
See, this is the thing. This is propaganda. This is Tucker propagandizing. This is how propaganda works. Let me just, I've been writing a book about World War II and Germany and how it got to where it was. I'm not trying to compare everything to Germany here, but there are some patterns that emerge that are, ubiquitous. Every single time some psychotic stuff happens in a country, you can find these qualities, these things. Hitler was leading the Nazi party, which was reasonably small, but not... It's kind of like MAGA in 2016. It wasn't like... They hadn't gained political power fully yet. But there were some nutcase, MAGA people in office that were spouting off about how great Trump is at the time. That's kind of how big it was in, I think, 1923, when Hitler had the Beer Hall Putsch, or the Munich Putsch. It was a coup attempt, a full-blown coup attempt where Hitler marched an angry crowd of rioters up to the Capitol building and captured 3 members of parliament, three congressmen, basically, and forced them to name people who would be in the new government that he was forming. The only reason his January 6th, if you will, didn't work, Hitler's, that is because he didn't cut communication in the city. He didn't prevent people from leaving to call the military in. He should have cut communication first. That's why it failed. Anyway, he went to prison for, he was sentenced to 5 years for high treason against the German government. He only served 9 months. The people that sentenced him said they wanted him to have deaf guards so he couldn't talk them out or talk them into releasing him. I don't think he actually had deaf guards, but that was the sentiment of Hitler at the time. So while he's in prison for high treason, he outlines his propagandistic methods. He probably picked these up from somewhere else. A lot of this stuff is picked up from Mussolini's fascist party, which was on the rise, maybe taking control already. I think in 1919 it took control. This is in 23. I could be wrong on those dates, but you get the idea. It was around that time. And Mussolini implemented a lot of propagandistic methods and stuff already. The original fascist, the fascist party. So listen to some of these propaganda ideas that Hitler was coming up with while sitting in jail. By the way, it's just from my notes, so it's just like what I wrote down. Propaganda must be distilled into a few small slogans and repeated until every idiot has heard and understood the basic point. Yeah, Hitler viewed everybody as just idiots. The general populace is just full of idiots. Oh, and they're all feminine, too, everybody. Not women, just, feminine, I guess. The public's power to forget is enormous. Propaganda should always be based on emotion, not reason, because most people are feminine. Women think with emotions rather than logic. So even the men are feminine because they think with emotions. Everybody. Except Hitler, of course. Must be continuous. This is called Fire Hose of Falsehoods, and it was perfected and named, I believe, in 2014 in Russia. I think that Putin popularly created didn't create it. It was in use before, but it was in heavy use and... Well, let me see. Was it named in 2014? Yeah, okay. The Rand Corporation coined the name Fire Hose of Falsehood in 2016, 2 years after Russia invaded Ukraine in 2014. They invaded Crimea and took that land and hold it to this day. Anyway, yeah, that's the idea behind it. Fire Hose of Falsehood. You have to get it out in every media outlet you can possibly hit and distill it down to a few short, easy sentences, like single sentence. Russia, 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 or fake news, or whatever. There are a billion different examples. Hitler used Lügenpresse, lying press, fake news. The sentences that you say can be distilled into slogans, and the slogans will eventually turn into single words or phrases, very short phrases, which will eventually get into everybody's head. In one way or another, everybody will hear these short little quips. That was Hitler's plan. There's a point behind this, and it relates back to Tucker. Bear with me. Must never admit to being wrong. Short sentences, powerful emotive statements. Build to a climax, rise in pitch, climbing to an emotional crescendo. No qualifiers. Everything was final. Absolute. He drew a parallel with his own poverty-stricken life to relate to the working man. Appealed to religious archetypes to resurrection, suffering, humiliation, redemption, without ever overtly using religious language. Yeah, that's unrelated. But the simple common denominator in all of his propaganda was the Jews, of course. If something bad happens, like January 6th, wait for the public to forget, and then work on small local rural areas to flip the narrative to one of heroism. Remember, society is forgetful. People don't remember the crazy stuff that happened. So yeah, the beer hall putsch was awful and horrific, and it was a full-blown treasonous attempt at taking the government. And everybody was unhappy with the Nazi Party after that, and Hitler. But he had people slowly but surely work into the system. They were getting elected in city councils and boards and things like that, and writing op-eds in newspapers that were inflammatory. These people are really heroes. Slowly but surely reworked the image, the interpretation, or the perception of what happens. that sound familiar at all to anybody? Anyway, the reason I bring all of this up is because that's exactly what Tucker is doing here. Now, this is not new. This isn't like Tucker's doing. Everything he's doing, he's just repeating age-old propaganda about evolution. Must never admit to being wrong. No qualifiers. Everything is final and absolute. I am correct. There's none, zero evidence to prove evolution, is what he said a second ago. Remember?
Litter to litter. But no, there's no evidence at all that, none, zero.
See how the absolute is coming out?
That, people, evolve seamlessly from a single cell amoeba. No, there's not. There's
portraying the other as ridiculous in these short little slogans. I mean, that wasn't in the propaganda list that I took, but that was part of it.
There's no chain in the fossil record of that at all. And that's why you don't actually hear people, you hear them make reference to evolution because the theory of adaptation is clearly, obviously true.
Giving an alternative.
But Darwin's theory's totally that's why it's still a theory.
And there is another piece of propaganda. The general public, just a theory. The general public will hear that slogan, that quip, and it will resonate with them because the general public aren't made up of scientists. They don't realize that theory has a different meaning in the scientific community. Yeah, the theory of evolution is a theory, just like the theory of gravity, the theory of relativity. There are a billion theories. Germ theory of disease, it's all made up of theories. That's science. It's not... He's using the word theory here as a scientist would use the word hypothesis. Kind of a blind guess, closing your eyes and throwing a dart at the board and seeing if you hit something. That's how people, create this. You come up with an idea, an explanation that you think makes sense, and you test it, you falsify it, you poke holes in it, you do everything you can to prove it wrong. And if it stands up to scrutiny and it has a predictive quality to it, then it sticks, then it stays. And you can derive laws from that theory. But the general public doesn't know that. And when they hear just a theory, it's a quick, easy slogan that they can throw out. Anytime this conversation comes up, anytime they hear the word evolution or whatever, they can throw that out there. Like I said, Tucker didn't come up with this, I don't think. No, I mean, I've heard this a billion times from other people long before Tucker. But he's just repeating the same propaganda that's been used for like decades.
Darwin's theory's totally that's why it's still a theory almost 200 years later. No, we have not found that at all. And I can't even guess. I mean, I have my own theories on it, but they're not proven.
What are your theories?
Yeah, again, he's saying I have theories, but they're not proven, trying to link the two. Not proven and theory, right?
Proven.
What are your theories?
God created people, distinctly. And
okay, that's not a theory. That's just a blind shot in the dark that has absolutely no evidence or proof or whatever to it. You want to believe that? Fine. But we're talking about science here. God may exist out there. It's not impossible, I suppose. But he did not create the earth in 6 literal days. He didn't create plants a day before he created the sun. Nor was that day thousands of years long, or millions, or whatever. Gap theory. The days of creation were actually eons. No. You can say God, kind of kickstarted the first life and guided evolution, if you'd like. That, whatever. I mean, there was no way to prove that true or false. So it's still a hypothesis. But if you want to say that, sure.
What are your theories?
God created people.
It's not a theory.
Distinctly, and animals. I mean, I think that's what every person on Earth thought until the mid-19th century, actually.
Right.
Not really. I mean, there were others, deists, and, there were atheists. Voltaire was famously an atheist. But yeah, I guess the majority of people in the Western world, in Europe and the United States and other areas, they believed in a god of some sort, usually the Christian god, right?
Actually.
Right. But
it's not a new idea.
Dude, imagine having that laugh. That'd be a nightmare.
They didn't have computers. They didn't have a general understanding that we have today of the process.
Do you think we understand more now?
What? That is such a stupid question. That is a stupid thing to say. Do you think we understand more now? Really? Yes. Yes, we do. We understand more now. You know, there was a point in time when we thought that the elements of the universe were when we thought the elements of the universe were water, fire, soil, and wind or something like that. Or ground or whatever. Ground was one of them. And now we realize that the elements of the universe are, hydrogen, oxygen, I don't know the order of the periodic table, but, carbon and silicon and so on and so forth. We learned that elements are separate, distinct pieces, separate, distinct structures. And we learned to write chemical formulas. You know how we learned that? By separating out. We have a guaranteed way to separate hydrogen from oxygen, right? So all you have to do is electrocute water and have like two things over top of it, and hydrogen will go in one and oxygen in the other. It splits it in half when it vaporizes. That's how submarines create their oxygen that they breathe. Anyway, electrolysis, that's how you create hydrogen and oxygen. You can weigh those two elements, those two, you can weigh what comes out of electrocuting water and get a rough idea of how much of one element is in an equation to how much of another. So that's how they discovered this stuff at first. That's how chemical formulas came to be written. If it didn't divide evenly, so like if you have like 0.3 carbon atoms to 0.5 oxygen atoms or something, for example, you have to like go up until you find the lowest common denominator, the least common denominator, whatever it is, until they're all whole numbers. And that was reaffirmed that is in fact true. That is how it works. And we even know what they look like because we've seen them with X-ray crystallography. We can see the shapes of molecules. Seriously. Shine an X-ray at things, at crystals, ice cubes, or whatever, and you will see the shape of molecules. I mean, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to just see it without the context. But scientists have been working on this for like a very long time. This is an example of X-ray crystallography, basically. You're shining an X-ray through and seeing this molecule. The center, this is an atom, I think. The center is black, usually. I don't know why there's this weird white circle here, but usually the center is black because the probability that an atom or that a particle, some piece of the atom will be there is very, very high. This is an interference pattern. So the darker that it gets, the less likely that it's going to be that we'll find something there. So this is a valence band right here, for example. Inner valence bands, outer valence bands. Atoms don't actually, circle the way that, like, the electrons don't circle atoms that way, actually. But it's just a simplified example. This is a real image of an atom, though. The white circle is to tweak HDR for good detail visibility. Oh, there you go. Thank you for the information. Yeah, it's usually a black circle in the center. So we discovered it and reaffirmed that we have the chemistry correct. Sorry, apparently I confused my editor with this statement. Some people may not be aware. I took a year or 2 years in chemistry because I wanted to be a chemist. So I kind of have a little bit of insight into how this works. When I say atoms don't circle around a nucleus, or electrons don't circle around a nucleus the way that planets circle around a sun, what I mean is it's more like a honeycomb structure where they're shooting into and out of an area, and they're moving in a very specific direction, and they have a probability of being in this place rather than that place. Now, there are bands, valence bands, that are further out from the nucleus than others. And that's how they gain energy or lose energy. That's how molecules are formed, because they share a valence band, they share electrons, that kind of thing. That's what I mean when I say it doesn't move around like planets around a sun. It's an example of a theory, chemical theory or something. I don't even know which one that is. That's an example of something that we had, information we had, that we have now that we didn't have 200 years, 300, 400, 500 years ago. In fact, I think that was discovered in the early 1900s, specifically, to mid-1900s. We know more now, like a lot more.
And more now?
Yes.
Really?
You don't think that we understand more today?
We understand way less. We understand.
That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard from somebody, I think.
We understand way less. We understand so little that we're actually sitting here allowing, like, a bunch of greedy, stupid, childless software engineers in Northern California to like flirt with the extinction of mankind.
What? He's talking about AI. Software engineers from Northern California are flirting with the extinction of mankind by working on AI, and they're childless. How do you know they're childless? You think that every software engineer is childless? What are you talking about? Where did he come up with that? And why did he emphasize it? Well, the reason he emphasized it is because he wants you to think that they're not invested in the future of the planet. They don't care what happens because they don't have children. So they're just going to like do whatever and take massive risks with everything because why not? But I don't know where he got the idea that they're childless. That's insane. Another quick little slogan, a little quip, an easy thing. They're childless. That's why they're doing it. An explanation for something.
So no, previous generations would be like, what? No, stop.
Anyway, the point is that Tucker is absolutely unglued from reality in this entire thing. And he's propagandizing. Whether he realizes this, whether he came up with this, it's all propaganda. It doesn't matter. But fascinatingly, the right has come up with these really interesting like websites and articles, like news articles and stuff, supporting Tucker and condemning evolution. I just want to like read through this real quick. This is on Standing for Freedom Center, the Standing for Freedom Center, standingforfreedom.com. The title of the article, God vs. Darwin. Tucker Carlson rightly calls out evolution as nonsense. Written April 30th, 2024. Let's just read a little bit of this. By the way, this is supposed to be like a news website. That's how it's being presented. Christians should not only reject the Big Bang and evolution theories, but they should wholly embrace six-day creationism because it upholds the authority and trustworthiness of the Bible as divine revelation and demonstrates God's omnipotence, omniscience, and sovereignty over all creation. Why does God need that demonstrated? Can't he just come in and speak it into our minds all at once? Like when we come to consciousness, 10 years old, God programs something in our heads that auto plays on our 10th birthday. Everybody's 10th birthday across the entire planet that says, I am God, I created you, blah, blah, blah. That would be pretty convincing and compelling at the very least, right? Instead, what we have is a world that looks exactly how it would look if there was no God. I don't know if there is one or not, maybe, but it looks precisely like it would if he wasn't in the picture at all. It's kind of interesting. Tucker Carlson, a prominent figure in American media and politics, has recently shifted his discourse, delving into fundamental philosophical and religious questions. This change in his discussion topics is significant, as it explores the deeper meaning of the political battles that our nation is currently witnessing. There's a political battle over evolution? Okay, interesting. Carlson certainly seems like he's not far from the kingdom, quote-unquote. His journey toward Christianity appears to be a gradual one, marked by introspection and Bible reading. As far as I'm tracking, he's yet to openly call himself a Christian. Still, he continues to articulate deeply Christian themes and truths, both on his own platform and in his media appearances. Does that sound familiar? Didn't we just read something like that? Appealed to religious archetypes like resurrection, suffering, humiliation, redemption, etc., without ever using overt religious words or specific ideas from religious groups or whatever. That was one of Hitler's written down propaganda techniques when he was sitting in jail for high treason in 1923, I think, or somewhere in that vicinity. Recently, Carlson joined the famous podcaster Joe Rogan for a long-form and wide-ranging conversation about a wide array of topics, including whether aliens are actually demons. Spoiler alert, they are. Yeah, I covered this entire thing if you want to see it. It's on my Unfiltered YouTube channel. Link in the description to that. It's actually releasing as we speak, I think. Watch the whole thing beginning to end, all of it. What caught my attention was the unexpected manner in which Carlson dismissed the scientific theory of Darwinian evolution as laughable. I wasn't expecting such a frank and even scornful rejection of what has long been a tenet of modernity. It was refreshing. Here's a lightly edited transcript of that portion of the interview. Quote, "There's no evidence that evolution is true. In fact, I think we have kind of given up on the idea," so on and so forth. We saw it. And then they go on to break down line by line in text form. That's absolutely fascinating. So when Tucker was asked, what are your theories? He said, God created people distinctly and animals. I think that's what every person on Earth thought until the mid-19th century, actually. That's not a new idea. I guess this person posted like some quotes from the Bible. As Answers in Genesis explains, not Answers in Genesis, oh my God. When we look carefully at Genesis 1 in Hebrew or even in English, it's clear that God created everything in 6 literal 24-hour days. Yeah, the word there is yom. The word that's used, it's commonly used to refer to a day. But the book of Genesis is not normal literature. It's something called origin literature. It's also called antiquity literature. That's the Roman version. That's the Roman word for it. The Greek word is archaeological literature. And it differs from normal literature in that it just takes a bunch of anecdotes from people at the time and compiles them all into a single book. But Genesis is made up of like 12 different books, right? It compiled it all, and it doesn't omit, anything from fact to legend to completely fictitious experience. It just gets people's stories, campfire stories and stuff. There's an old story about a frog, and I think it's a frog and a scorpion, and they want to cross the river. Scorpion says, take me across the river. The frog says, no, you'll sting me. Scorpion says, no, I promise I won't. We'd both die then, and I don't want to die, so I promise I won't. They get halfway through the river. Scorpion stings the frog. He said, why'd you sting me? Now we'll both die. He said, because I'm a scorpion. That's what scorpions do. An example of a moral lesson that has no basis in fact whatsoever. I don't even know what the moral lesson's supposed to be from that. Bad people do bad things? But it has talking animals and complete misrepresentation of how reality works. Suspension of belief about reality. And that's fine. It's a campfire story. That's what the book of Genesis is, all the way through, beginning to end. A bunch of people wrote down their campfire stories. So yeah, he said in 6 literal days, Yom, in 6 days God created the earth. Because it was a campfire story. I mean, these people are just shameless and either completely clueless on this information or intentionally propagandizing. It has to be one of the two. Tell me what you think about Tucker in the comments. Is he one of the people who's shamelessly propagandizing and lying? Or is he a true believer? I think he's lying, personally. Gravitational waves were proven almost 100 years after being predicted by Einstein. Yeah, that's a good point. Gravitational waves, that's true. They had a big, gigantic thing that shined a laser to one end and had mirrors that reflected it and everything to detect gravitational waves. Yeah, that's the predictive power of a theory. It can predict things, and whether it's been proven at this immediate moment, you try to prove it wrong. That's the goal. Prove it wrong somehow. If we proved that gravitational waves did not exist, it would be evidence that we need to tweak Einstein's theory of relativity in some way to make it more conform with reality. Look at quantum mechanics. We don't understand quantum mechanics. It's weird. Spooky action at a distance, quantum tunneling. Sometimes there's a big thing, a barrier between electrons so that they can't pass over the bridge. In a transistor, for example. Sometimes the electron will just zip over to the other side, just boop, disappear from reality and reappear on the other side. That doesn't make any sense. When you measure an atom, or some quality of the atom, spin or speed or whatever it is, you kind of collapse the atom's wave function, and it just stops, all of it. So you can take a piece of the atom and move it further away across the earth, and instantaneously, when you stop the piece over here in North America, the other piece over there in China stops. Instantly. Instantaneous communication. That's weird. There's something that we don't understand about that. There's something like not right. That's not a failure of reality. That's not a failure of anything except for our own understanding of the situation. There is an explanation, an overarching theory that explains this entire thing. We just don't have it yet. We haven't figured it all out yet. That's all. I read this book called Fabric of the Cosmos by Brian Greene a while back. It was absolutely fascinating. He talks about how we know for a fact that quantum entanglement is actually, instantaneous communication, not just like, you have a left glove and a right glove, and somebody takes the right glove and puts it in a case and goes to the top of Mount Everest and opens it, and now they instantaneously know that the other one is a left glove. It's not like that. That's what Einstein thought. No, it's actual, real, instantaneous communication, and we know it through a study that happened in 1972. Whole big mathematical thing about it. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. I just think it's super fascinating.